Good morning, everybody. Welcome. We have a very special event today. So let me get started. My name is Mary Grillo. I am the chair of the San Diego Museum of Art's Docent Lecture Series. We operate out of the San Diego Museum of Art, located here in Balboa Park, which is unceded land of the Kumeyaay Nation. This lecture series is just one of the Docent Council programs in our work to foster a welcoming and inclusive museum experience through empathy-based learning, exploration, and conversation about the arts. I would like to recognize those who helped make this program possible. B. Barraza, who could not be with us today. Graciela Platero, where's Graciela? There she is, our docent manager. And of course, my partner in crime, David Miles. I'm going to remind you to please mute your phones in case you haven't already. And we will have a very brief question and answer period after the lecture because we're going to go a little long today. Now, before we move on, please let us welcome the San Diego Museum of Art trustees who are here with us today, sitting up front here. Hello. Thank you for your leadership and support of our museum. Thank you. So today is a special lecture. In June, our lecture is dedicated to the memory of San Diegan Larry Baza, who was a lifelong advocate for the arts, a social activist, a social activist, and a member of the California Arts Council. We are honored to have Tom Knoll, Larry's husband, here with us today. For those of you who didn't know Larry, he was a respected voice and advocate for inclusivity and a champion for progress, not only in San Diego, but statewide as well. As a champion for social justice, Latinos, and the LGBTQ movement, he recognized the importance of connecting the arts to other community causes. His compassion, courage, and commitment to social justice and the arts serves as an example to all of us as to how we can make our world a better place. In honor of Larry. And now, it is my honor to introduce someone who not only understands the importance of connecting the arts to the community, but she is doing it just here in San Diego and internationally. Roxana Velásquez is the Maruja Baldwin Executive Director and CEO at the San Diego Museum of Art. As a passionate advocate for the arts, Ms. Velásquez has focused on fostering cross-cultural dialogues within the San Diego community, as well as nationally and internationally. Throughout her professional career, in her capacity as the Executive Director of the Museo Nacional de San Carlos, Museo Nacional de Arte, and the Museo del Palacio de Bellas Artes in Mexico City, and currently our own San Diego Museum of Art, she has elevated each respective institution to international recognition. As the Executive Director and CEO of SDMA, she has increased the institution's holdings with donations and acquisition of works of art by world-renowned artists. During her tenure, the museum has acquired more than 3,000 works of art through donations and gifts. High-level exhibitions and loans from the museum's collection travel continuously around the world, reinforcing cultural exchange while at the same time raising the global recognition of our institution. The museum has successfully collaborated with local peer institutions, including the San Diego Symphony, the San Diego Youth Symphony, and the University of California, San Diego. Ms. Velásquez has been distinguished by the King of Spain with the Cross of Isabel de Catolica for outstanding cultural projects of Spanish art organized in Mexico. The Belgian government awarded her with the prestigious decoration of the Knight of the Order of the Crown for cross-cultural relations between Belgium and Mexico. Ms. Velásquez served on the Paris Biennial Commission, responsible for selecting the international galleries and antique dealers to exhibit in the 2017 and 18 biennials. In 2020, she received the Charles Nathanson Memorial Award for Cross-Border Region Building at LEAD San Diego's 18th Annual Visionary Awards. This award recognizes visionary leadership by addressing and demonstrating joint solutions to cross-border issues and further uniting San Diego and Baja California for a common future. And most recently, in 2023, Ms. Velásquez led the historic merger of the Museum of Photographic Arts and the San Diego SDMA to be one unified institution. The strategic merger allows for the combination of collections, resources, and expertise for the benefit of the San Diego community and beyond. Today, Roxana will take us through a journey highlighting how thoughtful architectural design can create immersive environments, foster community engagement, and elevate the cultural significance of the museum. Let us welcome Roxana Velásquez.
Thank you, Mary. That was a little too long, but thank you so much. I'm sorry, guys, for needing to hear, this story, but of course it has been a story of love, as you know well. So, good morning, and what a big pleasure to be here again with you, opening, not opening this time, closing. I used to open the talks for the last, 10 years, but closing your docent lecture series. And what an honor, and what really a good memory I have of my big friend, Larry Bassa. I'm so happy to see you here, and you must know that when I arrived to San Diego almost 14 years ago, he was my first connection. So thank you, and thank you, Larry. Especially important and relevant and exciting for me is to share with you all one of my favorite subjects, architecture. And precisely in this pivotal chapter, we at the San Diego Museum of Art are turning 100 years of existence, and at this precise moment are beginning to imagine and design what will be the next century. Architecture has indeed played a crucial role through our history, and architects, for me, represent a type of creative being that combines science and art, form and function at the highest levels. As you all know, architecture is the art and science of making certain that our cities and buildings actually fit with the way we want to live our lives. Architecture is more than just constructing a building or providing a home. Architecture is aimed at improving life, creating timeless, free, joyful spaces for all of our daily activities. Architecture has existed since humankind began. In choosing a beginning, let us start with Marcus Vitruvius, the very well-known Roman military engineer and architect who wrote the treatise, De Architectura, where he defined the three principles of architecture, better known as the Vitruvian triad. All buildings, he stated, should have three main attributes: firmitas, venustatis, and utilitas. Firmitas, strength. It should stand up robustly and remain in good condition. Venustatis, or beauty. It should be attractive and appealing to the people. It should delight and raise our spirits. Utilitas, functionality. It should be useful and function well for the people that are using it. The art and technique of designing and building is distinguished from the skills associated with only construction. The practice of architecture is employed to fulfill both practical and expressive requirements, and thus it serves both utilitarian and aesthetic ends. Unique among creative and artistic professions, architecture must always reflect the age and cultural context during which it was produced. More so, architecture gives a city existence, accessibility, style, and meaning. Architecture, as mentioned, is distinct from construction in the sense that it encompasses originality, creativity, and the fact that it is capable to ignite, provoke among the people of its towns, cities, countries, and continents a sense of pride, ownership, or even marvel. An iconic building with a harmonious balance between form and functionality has a unique capacity of transforming the urban or rural landscape with the almost alchemistic power to awaken and convert a complete region into an indelible experience. Today, thank you for allowing me to take the liberty to choose some of my favorite examples of architecture throughout the world and throughout the centuries that will exemplify the statements that I just said. And I just want all of you to allow yourselves to be immersed in the images that we will be touring together. And always remember that Dante Alighieri wrote in the Divine Comedy, the world, the cosmos is conceived through architectonic properties, a tripartite structure of three realms. Hell, visualized as an iconic pit, purgatory, described as an iconic mountain on the exact opposite side of the planet, or paradise, consisting of infinite spheres. I read in a magazine of architecture some years ago this phrase that always stick to my brain. Architecture over the centuries has served as an intellectual edifice where channels of thought in mathematics, cosmology, and philosophy intersect in a unique, poetically manner. But for all of you, just imagine to be surrounded by or to enter a work of art in a functional way. That for me represents a rare capacity of experiencing perfection. The first one. The image that you are contemplating now is a painting by Giovanni Paolo Panini, done in 1757. It is a collection of the city's most famous monuments, Rome. There were two paintings, in fact, the Rome Antica and the Rome Moderna, the modern Rome. And the painting depicts, as you can see, a collection of miniature images of monuments, must-see spaces in Rome. And in this case, the Comte de Seville, the French ambassador to Rome at the time, commissioned this pair of paintings, and he himself is portrayed at the center contemplating a guidebook. Panini, 18th century artist, I know many of you know him, included himself in the painting and also paying respect to the relevance of architecture and architects. The so-called Grand Tour for painters and tourists alike was implied the visit of these Roman monuments, or Venice in some cases, and the genre called veduti, capriccios, that I'm sure you all know, were created as souvenirs for the visitors to bring back home. That experience, that sensation of being exposed to a monument, a piece of architecture. The capriccios, as you know, is a landscape with architectural elements that are created in a fictional manner, but that intend to attract the spectators, of course, in attention. Also commissioned by the Comte of Steinville, the next painting, so-called the Modern Rome, is a pendant to ancient Rome and catalogs some of the city's most famous monuments from 2 centuries prior to the execution of the same painting. You can distinguish and identify easily works by Lorenzo Bernini, Michelangelo, the Piazza Navona, the Spanish Steps in Rome, and the Villa Borghese. I am absolutely sure many of you have been there. So what is architecture? Architecture is art at the highest level. Therefore, architecture is a language. It's a powerful language that has a capacity to communicate so many different things. It speaks clear and loud, and it's evocative. So I have chosen some aspects that for me imply to be standing or inside these masterpieces. And as I said, this is a selection for 1 hour of a talk. And excuse me, we go to 1 hour and 15 minutes. That's my tradition here. But I'll try to be brief. That's what I write my talks, to be brief. That doesn't mean I will follow them. The Blue Mosque, for me, is the sense of awe. And again, just as an advertisement, as warning you, there are so many pieces of architecture, works that I am not including, and it's obvious. That's impossible. We need a series of 6 lectures so we can cover them all, at least. But let's start with the Blue Mosque and what is for me the sense of awe. The Blue Mosque, go to the previous one. Thank you. Is also known by its official name of the Sultan Ahmed Mosque. It is an Ottoman-era historical imperial mosque located in Istanbul, Turkey. It was constructed between 1609 and 1617 during the rule of Ahmed I and remains as a functioning mosque today. It was originally built to contrast the Byzantine Hagia Sophia Grand Mosque. The architecture of the mosque is distinctive both inside and out. When you approach the Blue Mosque, the minarets are one of the most obvious features since you will see them towering above the ground. Most mosques have a single minaret from which the Muslim call to prayer is projected. However, it has been stated that the Ottoman sultans placed multiple at the mosques during their reigns to show their political power. The Blue Mosque is the first Ottoman imperial mosque with 6 minarets, 4 at the 4 corners and 2 more at the east and west corners of the courtyard. The only mosque with more than 6 is the famous Great Mosque at Mecca. Oral tradition tells us that Sultan Ahmed I added a 7th in the Mecca to preserve its grandeur and status as the most important mosque. Besides the minarets, the vibrant 12 domes, 77 feet in diameter and 141 feet high. 12 types of marble were used, the next one, Lavia, in the construction of the mosque and domes. But yet the most famous feature and the top thing to see and to be really seduced by is the blue interior, created by thousands of tiny, teeny blue tiles, also called Isnik tiles. Artists painted a distinct blue color with various geometric and floral motifs. There are approximately 23,000 tiles present in this building. In the lower levels tend to be geometric and traditionally styled, and in contrast, those at the higher level are painted with flowers and fruit. It contains 1,260 stunning stained glass windows that allow the natural light cascade in the interior. The second image I chose, and don't think I'm going to talk as long as these of every 120 images that we're going to see. I just wanted to focus in this element of Islamic architecture because we are in Balboa Park. The Alhambra. The Alhambra, for me, is, of course, one of my favorite places. Who cares for me, right? But this is my talk. But it has inspired gazillion writers, singers, poets, painters, engravers, and architects through the world. The Alhambra is a palace and fortress complex located in Granada, Andalusia, Spain, built chiefly between 1238 and 1358 in the reigns of Ibn al-Ahmar, founder of the Nasrid dynasty. The decorations of the interior are ascribed to Yusuf I, who died in 1354. It is one of the next one. It is one of the most famous monuments of Islamic architecture, as you all know, and one of the best preserved palaces of the history of Islamic world. In addition of containing stellar examples of Renaissance Spanish architecture, when the Moors were expelled in 1492 from Spain, Charles V, or Charles I, commissioned Pedro Machuca, the architect, the Renaissance architect, to build what is called today the Palace of Charles V. There's a combination of styles, a telling of history in this enormous palace. But here just I want you to focus in that beautiful patio of the lions, the fountain of the lions, the use of filter screens, the mocaraves, the textures of those plasters, and the capacity that this Alhambra palace has to create a sense of mystery in all of us. What was going there inside? The Generalife Gardens as well have inspired music, as you know well, concerts of Andalusia and multiple more. So you jump to the Taj Mahal to give me a break. Thank you. I don't think I need to speak. This is a moment for you only to allow yourselves to contemplate one of the biggest stars, of course, of architecture in the world. And it's, in a nutshell, a representation of love. We are seeing a tomb that entails love. And this is, again, the reflection of the water, an element that is so important in the Islamic architecture. And we are seeing nothing but a speechless moment of a beautifully pristine carved marble. And as I say, it is always an impressive experience to observe this type of image. The Taj Mahal, considered, of course, in Agra, India, and considered one of, I say, of the stars of the Islamic architecture in the world. Architecture also conveys a big sense, of course, a weight of history, civilization. Standing in front of an architectural presence, we understand everything without needing to hear nothing. The Giza Pyramid Complex, of course, also called the Giza Necropolis in Egypt, is home to the Great Pyramid, the Pyramid of Khafre, and the Pyramid of Menkaure, along with their associated pyramid complexes of the Great Sphinx. All were built during the 4th dynasty of the Old Kingdom of ancient Egypt between centuries. They were constructed to serve as a tomb and to make its essence remain forever as a demonstration of power. Architecture conveys, of course, power. And that is thanks to the fact that they believed in the permanence after death. Let's go to Mexico. Chichen Itza, the Pyramid of Kukulkan, El Castillo, the castle, also known as the Temple of Kukulkan, in a Mesoamerican step pyramid that dominates the center of Chichen Itza's archaeological site in the Mexican state of Yucatan. The temple building is more formally designated by archaeologists as the Chichen Itza structure. Constructed between the 8th and the 11th centuries, built by the pre-Columbian Mayan civilization, the building has served as a temple to the deity Kukulkan, the Yucatec Maya feathered serpent, deity known to the Aztecs as Quetzalcoatl, and in the central Mexican cultures of the post-classic period. The temple consists of a series of square terraces with stairways up each of the 4 sides of the temple on top. Sculptures of feathered serpents, Quetzalcoatl, run down, playing with the sun and the light and creating this magic sense of living and breathing serpents. It's all obviously an illusion created by the Kukulkan and Mayas. The Parthenon. The Parthenon, as you all know, is the former temple of Athenian at the Acropolis in Greece that was dedicated to the goddess Athena. Its decorative sculptures are considered some of the high points of classical Greek art, and the Parthenon is considered an enduring symbol of ancient Greece. It's considered a symbol of ancient Greece, democracy, and Western civilization. The construction started in 447, and it's in reality an ultimate symbol for the West civilization. It's a trademark, and it's one of the most significant monuments in the world. The Colosseum, also named as the Flavian Amphitheater, is a large amphitheater, as you all know. It was built during the reign of Flavian emperors as a gift to the Roman people. Construction of the Colosseum began between 70 and 72 AD under the emperor Tito Flavio Vespasiano, and of course created a typology. Petra. Petra is a symbol of Jordan, as well as Jordan's most visited tourist attraction. Famous for its rock-cut architecture and water conduit system, Petra is also called the Rose City because of the color of the sandstone from which it is carved. It was called a rose-red city half as old as time in a poem done in 1845 by John Bergen, built possibly as early as the 5th century BC. 5th century. The Great Temple occupied a prime spot in ancient Petra. The Great Wall, the next one, translated from the Chinese literally as 10,000 li, unit as Chinese unit of distances, a very long wall, of course, 13,171 miles, a series of fortifications that were built across the historical northern borders of ancient Chinese states and Imperial China as a protection against various nomadic groups from the Eurasian steppes. Several walls were built from as early as the 7th century BC, with selective stretches later joined by King Shi Huang, the first emperor. Here, of course, we are contemplating again an architectural construction that was done for protection, for defense, but says a lot. Machu Picchu in the 15th century is an Inca citadel located in the eastern cordillera of southern Peru on a 7,970 feet mountain ridge, often referred as the lost city of the Incas. It is the most familiar icon of the Inca Empire. Angkor Wat is a Hindu-Buddhist temple complex in Cambodia. It is dedicated to the Hindu god Vishnu, located on a site measuring 162 hectares within the ancient Khmer capital city of Angkor. It is considered as the largest religious structure in the world. The builder is Suryavarman II and founded in the 12th century. So from the antiquities or sites, I'm jumping to what I consider the omnipresence of the divine. We all know that architecture aims to create a sensation and convey an aesthetic emotion besides functionality. For me, there is not a clearer example than the Gothic cathedral. The story to be learned, the story to be told from the facade to the interior and the exit, the next one, exemplifies the transcendence of the spirituality and the perception of the divine. Any of you that have stepped foot into a Gothic cathedral like Notre Dame, Reims, Cologne, wherever you have gone, Seville, it's impossible to not feel the presence, the weight of those skills, the skills that were taught during the medieval times in order to manage the heights, the weight of those stones, the perfection of those rose windows, the stained glasses that just blinded us all when contemplating them. It is the real presence of spirituality for me, as I said, entering into these spaces and learning about the technical skills that were needed to combine the colors to create those stained glasses that marvelous us. I needed to stop more than just in a brief slide. Keep going, Dalia. Of course, the techniques. Let's go to the Renaissance now. Jumping from the medieval times, the Renaissance allows me to talk about two things that I consider relevant for our story of architecture. First, from the presence of the divine to the landing of the humankind. Renaissance, the human being is at the center. We know, we control, we want to have a lower communication with God or deity at the time. It's a direct connection through rationalism and learning. And it's the people of the town in Florence, the bankers, the Medicis, who envisioned the fact that they needed to excite and create a one uniting, unifying building, the dome of this cathedral, to create the pride and to create, as I said, unification from a town. So the case of the Medicis, of course, I'm sure all of you have seen the series, the Netflix. But if you have not been in this baptistry and this dome, I really invite you. Don't go in the summer, it's really hot. But take a chance to observe those marbles and that perfection of management of mathematics and proportion to create this enormous dome in Santa Maria del Fiore. The Renaissance. So let's go to the Baroque now, very fast. The Baroque, what is the Baroque? The exuberance, the grandeur, the sensuous, the voluptuosity, the dynamism of those lines, so complex. The Baroque was intended to create, again, a sense of presence. I'm exposing here, of course, the St. Peter's Cathedral, the Vatican, because I consider really an impressive Baroquism way to embrace the people. It is this colonnade of Bernini that has been, of course, part of so many architectural conversations still. Or jumping to the palaces, let's go to Versailles. Again, the 17th century, this palace is not just the palace of a king or the kings, Louis XIV, the king's son, or Louis XV or Louis XVI, who of course suddenly had to leave the place. It is really a model that marked the need to repeat at every single reign and aristocracy, royalty, their Versailles. Versailles includes artists, libraries, knowledge, proportion, light. It was an invitation to all of those to receive the power and the presence of the Age of Enlightenment. So this piece of architecture conveys all those abstract but very clear concepts that I just described. Everybody wanted to have a Versailles, every kingdom, and try to repeat. So moving to the, of course, the Versailles mirror, you have moved me here to the Louvre, because now we are arriving, of course, after all this preamble, a little long one, but a one that I hope prepare you to understand where are those elements arriving to the museums. Let's go to our world, the art museums, or the museums only, or the spaces for cultural activities that have absorbed and learned all this, very brief but element that different architectures have provided us with. So, the Louvre. This is a fabulous image. I hope you like it. Without the pyramid. What do you think? Are you awakened? It's not easy to find an image of the Louvre before the pyramid, and it's more difficult to imagine it in our brains. But I want you to remember that the Louvre that started and has a huge history of transformations, from being a palace to adorning in the Baroque style to presenting the power of France at the time, became a museum after the revolution. The place was exactly to share knowledge, to share culture, and it became, and as it is today, the most visited museum in the world. I have not known of a museum that had to cut attendance, and the current director had to put a limit. We can only take 7 million a year. We cannot go to 7,500,000. So it is impressive, of course, evidently, the story of the collection I don't need to mention, the stars of the world, but what I want to mention is the fact that they needed to solve a circulation problem, that those millions were needing to have a real facility that provided conditions, and there was impossible. There was no way to create that. And François Mitterrand, the president at the time, invited one of the giants of architecture, Ayampe, to design this pyramid that for all of you say, oh, Roxana, that's so obvious. I'm just bringing your memory back to remember when that pyramid appeared, the scandal that it provoked, the criticism. It was not really sexy. It was not an alluring conversation. It provoked ink in newspapers criticizing the intervention. But it was Paris. The same happened with the Eiffel Tower, you all know. But it's very interesting because for us that is almost a Parthenon. It's a classic image. But remember, not long time ago, it was a big scandal. And today is admired by architects and designers as one of the genius circulation solutions created for a space that needed 3 entrances. And again, just as with Versailles at the time, the Chateau de Versailles, everybody wanted to have a Louvre, their pyramid. So it is really, really curious. And I have to pay homage here to Ayampe. And how many architects do I have in the room? Do I have so many architects? Can you raise your hands? Okay. You know, architects are very happy people. Have you heard about it? And you know why? Because they adore what they do. They are passionate about art. And they tend to live long, right? Ayampe died at 102 years. I don't know if you remember that, but this is one of the greatest genius, and I had the pleasure of meeting him personally at the Qatar Islamic Art Museum. And to hear an architect and projecting that humbleness, he was 91 in 2008, when he opened the Doha Museum, which we're gonna see soon in some next slides. But here we are at the moment. I'm just mentioning to the architects that yes, you're happy people and you tend to live long. The Musée d'Orsay. The Musée d'Orsay, another example, 1993 says here in my slide, but I remember it was in the early 19th where another genius guy, Aulenti, Italian architect, decides to transform the railroad station, the Gare d'Orsay, into the 19th century fabulous museum. For many of you, and for many years, people used to say, I love the Orsay, that's my favorite museum in the world. And I just want to bring out the attention, not to the Impressionists, that we all love, that's an easy thing. I want to bring your attention into the genius of Guy Aulenti, transforming a railroad station that was built for 1900s, for that moment in Paris, into this gorgeous museum that we all know now. The next one, let me take you to Mexico again. Here's no bias, eh? The National Museum of Anthropology. Those of you that have not been there, you're missing something. This is, and I say it with objectivity, one of the best anthropology museums in the world, done in 1964 by Pedro Ramirez Vázquez, one of the best and foremost architects in Mexico. You know there's a big tradition of architecture in Mexico, but Pedro Ramirez Vázquez was able to convey in a gorgeous space the connection of the Mesoamerican cultures to provoke the sense of the diversity, geographically speaking, of jungles, deserts, you know, the coastlines. You see the Olmecs, the Aztecs, the Mayas, and they brought to this space not only the materials utilized in those pre-Columbian areas, but the ventilation, the capacity to go in and out the buildings, the galleries. It has received multiple awards in the world of architecture, and I'm just calling your attention that this was done in 1964, and it has not been changed at all, other than, of course, maybe some lights or ventilations. The principles of the architecture is really a must. Continuing with Mexico City, letting the 60s back and coming to the 2012. Jumex, Eugenio Lopez is the owner of a fruit juice company, very well known, that is exported around the world. He collected the most impressive international contemporary art collection, including from Damien Hirst to Jeff Koons, to you name it. He invited David Chipperfield, the British genius architect that also designed the Berlin Island and many more, to do this very clean, geometric building. And in the inside, I don't have a picture of the inside, but please go and see the cleanness of the lines and the scandalous contemporary art that is inside. Behind the Chipperfield building, you have a Fernando Romero building. Sumaya, this is the private collection of Carlos Slim, and the opposite, the building tends to be truly modern, but yet it exhibits old masters. So this is a game of architecture, one after the other. Toyo Ita, the Japanese architect, invited to Puebla. Puebla is an 18th century city of Mexico that houses the vice-regal paintings, the castas, the landscapes. And yet we have this impressive example of modernity and minimalistic, Toyo Ito. Keep going. Guggenheim. Okay, let's get to the United States. Of course, we cannot not mention the father of architects here, Frank Lloyd Wright. You all have seen this museum, I guess, I assume, right? That's why I don't take a lot of time here. But of course, creating this circulation, this connection between the viewer and the paintings, the story of the 20th century, walking from top to bottom, was an absolute transformational moment. Guggenheim takes me now to Bilbao. I think this is the biggest story of a transformation by a piece of architecture. Everybody, like centuries ago, wanted to have a Versailles, want to have their Frank Gehry building. Bilbao, as you know, is the best place to have food. If you have not gone to a restaurant, I can recommend you. Wake up. Seriously, Bilbao was a place where the ETA, the terrorists, the dust, the dirtiness of the water was a tragedy for years. And here comes an architect. Here comes a building, and exactly that's where I was thinking in the word alchemist. It was almost a magic way to transform something that when you read about Bilbao before and after Frank Gehry, different story. Today, Bilbao is full of architects. It's like Berlin, but before, of course, a catalog where you could see IMB buildings by, you name it, Legorreta, on and on, Renzo Piano. I mean, it is a collection of, but the fact that the Guggenheim was inserted in a place transformed the way we see the power of architecture. That's at least obviously a personal comment. And keep going. And I won't talk about the structures and the movement and the seductive lines because you are always seeing it. Today in Bilbao, in the next year, 2025, May, moving on to 2025, the Museo de Bellas Artes de Bilbao, the Fine Arts Museum, which for years people did not visit because they were too busy seeing Frank Gehry and the Gehry collections. Bilbao is a traditional old masters European great collection, 19th century. Look at the building to your left. Is it your left? Yes, your left. Norman Foster is doing the expansion of that building without touching the original building of the 19th century, late 19th century. On top of that building, he's doing an impressive terrace, and it's, of course, all over the internet, you can check it. But we were there visiting this renovation and utilizing all his, of course, known and knowledge to respect history, but yet appear in this 21st century manner. The British Museum, another iconic architectural intervention by Norman Foster, as you know, is the largest court in Britain, and it has allowed 100+ million visitors. That's what they said, and increased the collections displays by 40%. This is an old baby. This was in 2000, okay? But this dome was another of his masterpieces after the Reichstag. Continuing in London, the Tate Modern, Herzog and de Meuron, another impressive, of course, team of architects that redesigned the banks of the Thames, allowed the community to access to a building that became the hub of the city, providing a free entrance to contemplate masterpieces of contemporary art, like the Anish Kapoor that you are seeing there. But on top of that, the concerts, coffees, a place for the community to be. Today, we started with pre-Columbian ruins and pyramids and palaces. Today, we know that we need much more as a community. Kimball Art Museum, I didn't want not to mention Louis Kahn, another one of my big favorites. Louis Kahn created this Kimball Museum, one of the best collections of art in the United States, small but impressive of quality. And he created this gorgeous space in 1972. And then you remember the Renzo Piano, keep going, the Renzo Piano intervention, thank you. I'm just trying to see how these architects have in mind opening up spaces respectfully. I keep saying every architect respects his predecessor, and of course pays respect, but it's a learning, of course, lesson. So he tried to integrate the light and allow more pieces to play in a very respectful way. It brings me to think of Santander, north of Spain. Renzo Piano also has a new building there done 2 years ago. Let's go to Chicago. Chicago, keep going. Who doesn't know, of course, the Art Institute of Chicago? You know, it's the second largest museum, the biggest collection, one of the biggest prides in the United States, I would say. I mean, I just adore this collection and museum. So what could be done? Here comes Piano again. Renzo Piano inserting the light respectfully and opening up to the community to have multi-use spaces, from books to coffees and connecting the building to the Millennium Park. Remember that renovation? What can you do in Chicago? Chicago is the biggest catalog of architecture, right? Come on, it's one of the prides of the United States. How can you dare do something? So there goes Renzo Piano. Then we go to Boston, MFA Boston, which of course, for those of you that don't know, we are partnering with them and taking George O'Keeffe and Henry Moore. Just 5 minutes of advertisement. Sorry, 5 seconds. MFA Boston, another one of the jewels of the United States, one of the most traditional museums, right? A real study place. We have this intervention. Put me the model, the big one. Yes, I want you to see that one. Many of you maybe know it. But if you are not excited by this image, then guys, something is wrong with you. Isn't it amazing? I mean, just contemplate the traditional space, the respect of the neoclassicism, the very, I won't say dull, but let's say a story of a time, and then this added backside. This is MFA Boston, and at least for me, it's an exciting moment to be standing there and to see it from this aerial perspective. La Bourse, let's go to Paris now. Tadao Ando, bringing to all of you. And as you see, I don't go little, I really love the genius architect. Tadao Ando, Japan, Naoshima Island. Connection between nature and form, respect to silence. Exactly when I projected the Taj Mahal, when I see a piece of Tadao Ando, I want to be quiet and let the piece talk. This renovation, for those of you that have not seen it, I had the privilege of visiting in 2022. Go back, please. It's a 19th century stock market house, a commerce house, with these typical mural fresco of the 19th century, allegorical chariots and very, shalala classic. He was able to add concrete, almost in a brutalist manner, minimalism, glass, and respectfully, a collection of Mr. Pinault, who is the most contemporary collection and who had it exhibited at the Palazzo Grassi in Venice. And he negotiated with the government of France. You know, it's an easy negotiation, right? There's no bureaucracy there. So Pinault was able to negotiate that they gave him this amazing space. because of the fact that Tadao Ando was elected an architect. He was the crucial piece to make this an absolute triumph and success. They didn't want architects saying, hey, I'm going to do this, I'm going to alter that. Who was the most respectful one? Tadao Ando. So this is the story, and now you can go to see the collection there. So this is now Shima. Of course, you all have seen this exercise, but it's just the beauty of nature, as I said. And that was of 1992. Keep going, Dalia, please, because I'm running out of time. The Islamic Art Museum I mentioned to you, 2008, maybe the first large museum done in the Arab world, of course, from the recent times. 2008, IMP was commissioned by the Sheikh of Qatar to create a space that would remind all of the Islamic learnings, the sound of the water, the geometric, the Sufi architecture, the symmetry, the perfection of materials, the quiet spaces that would allow us to reflect. All of this was asked to IMP, and IMP was sent to the world at the age of 89, 90 years old to absorb, as I said, these principles. And look at that staircase. If you have not visited, I have to share with you that I was invited to the opening of this space, and it's one of my best moments in time. I'm like an architect. I'm not an architect, but I'm an architect of sensations, and I was able to witness this opening. And let me tell you that I will never forget that night. It started the story of what you today see as the Louvre in Abu Dhabi, or the next additions. Islamic collections were brought from the Louvre and exhibited back in that, it's not an emirate, but it's that region. The Abu Dhabi, Jean Nouvel, who doesn't know the Quai Branly in Paris, who has not seen the Institute of Monde Arabe, one of the most iconic buildings in Paris. Jean Nouvel also restored the Reina Sofia in Madrid, but for Abu Dhabi, he was invited, and it has been said it is his stellar piece, now opened just recently, 2017. And what are we seeing there? The filter screens again, and the response to creating a universal museum for the area, for the Arab world. They commissioned Jean Nouvel, giving him the task to bring a universal museum where cultures and civilizations were all connected. Keep going. Who said wow? I'm sorry. That's exactly what I was waiting all day. The wow effect, guys, untap your pores, right? What is this? That's the moment when I have to use the silences of music. Be quiet, Roxana. It's a wow woman. I adore Zaha Hadid, the late Zaha Hadid. She's, of course, as you all know, one of the genius women architects. And I am absolutely a fan of her work. Why? Because she was daring. It's not because she was a woman architect. It's because she was daring, push the boundaries, extreme the curves, create voluptuosity, and really expand our thoughts. What was she doing? This is Azerbaijan, I'm sorry for my pronunciation, let's say Baku, and it was considered by UNESCO, obviously, a world monument. This is a cultural center where an auditorium is inside, and when you see those curves, and she has worked in China and in many places. She was from Iraq born, but a British citizen, but she said that she was always told that a woman would never make it in architecture. That was not a normal thing, but yet she created a type of architecture that extracts our wow from the mouth. Keep going. Argentina, let's go to Latin America a bit. South America, the post office building, 19th century traditional building, very classic. The Kirchner family decide to create a cultural center, invite a group of architects, local architects, get inside, please, to a detail, and create the most important digital media immersive museum for Argentina. This is so successful, has been able to awaken communities, create that space, and from musical sounds to digital projections to augmented realities, the best technology and structure. But how do you transform a place like the one you saw into this amazing, iconic modernity without touching the exterior? Just architects can do that. Spain, the Royal Collections in Madrid. They just opened. I'm sure you saw all the newspapers in the world. This was less than a year ago. This big museum done by Tuñón and Mansilla in Madrid integrated and reintegrated the royal collections of Spain. And it is so respectful, go back, and almost so, what would I say, so clean, so cement. It's not trying to call your attention. It's just trying to inside open up spaces. Go please, the next one. And if you have not visited, just check it out, because it was gazillion amount of works of art that were able to be displayed without competing with the building. Next, the House of Wisdom, another project by Foster. This is a cultural center in Sharjah, again the Arab world, opened in 2020. And after talking to the community and asking the youth, what would you like to have as a library? What is your expectation for the next century? They came up with this building that has awakened that community and transformed it into a youth-specific center. Let's come to California. Let's go back home, because it's getting late here. Let's bring it back home. I think this doesn't need an introduction. But go back in your brains and remember what happened when the Getty opened. What were the newspapers of the world saying about Richard Meyer? About Hollywood or LA? Suddenly our concept of LA was changed. I have to go to LA? No, I have to go to the Getty. The Getty building surpassed the concept of culture. And remember this debate between the East Coast, the West Coast, go back to 97. This building, for me, is an absolute stellar building that was able to get the mission, of course, of showcasing the 4 branches of the Getty. That's it. The Frank area, again, 2003. That beautiful, gorgeous downtown in LA. Of course, I'm joking, eh? Anybody feels excited by the downtown in LA? Please. But then here he comes, another magic, right, appearing with this beautiful, pristine, acoustic masterpiece. And keep going. Mr. Broad, Charles Diller Scofidio and Renfro. Charles Renfro told me when he was in San Diego, Roxana, we needed to have a building that could not compete, but at least don't disappear, sitting against Jerry. And you know the story of this. Whether you like them or not, Diller and Scofidio built the MoMA in New York. They are the guys that are managing this genius way of not having space, yet having to have a space. But Diller Scofidio created a place, again, free space, free for the public. And if you remember that first year, they were taking notes and tickets, and all the crowds came to see the collection of a private guy, but very importantly, the building. SFA MoMA. We had Neil Van Ezra talking at one of our board meetings. I know if you remember, board members. He was here sharing with us the passage after 15 years walking to get that building right in San Francisco. And the result, go back. Don't rush me. I'm almost done. Almost done. Patience, my dear. And I know you need a lot with me. Hey, you know very well Snohetta. Snohetta are the Norwegian architects, another of those that respect environment, the planet, the world, and want to create these dances between architecture and nature. They told us here when they were in San Diego, the Snohetta team, that this building was inspired in the Cascades of San Francisco. So the polymer, that are the materials, move with the light and create this sense of water. And I'm going to remind you, the Kukulkan pyramid of the 8th century with the serpents, the feather serpents, we're doing exactly the same, just in the 8th century. There's nothing new under the sun. Okay, Salk Institute. Let's get home. I think many of you would agree with me. This is the best building we have in the city. What Louis Kahn made here, obviously, needs no explanation again. The modernity, the brutalistic manage of materials, the simplicity of those lines, the location of the sunset in the middle of that open plaza, right? Not invading with anything Baroque, but that impressive space to allow the scientists to come up with ideas and discuss in the plaza has been showcased by so many fashion shows and things. Sometimes we live with this or we don't even care. I always remind everybody, this is in the city, feel the pride. Because Luican made it with the collaboration of another Mexican architect, Barragan, who designed the plaza. And some of you would remember that we had an exhibition devoted to Luican some years ago at the San Diego Museum of Art, and we had the check that he got paid for designing the plaza. It was a beautiful exhibition done by Vitra architects in Germany. San Diego has changed. So in closing, I would just like to say, I hope I have been able to open up your senses, remind you things that you already know well, and obvious things, but remind you what is the power of architecture, what has our history done for us, why architects occupied that space in Dante's Divine Comedy, and art, of course, and how could we serve our communities better. The San Diego community for the San Diego Museum of Art, of course, has enlarged enormously. We have seen what has happened around the world, Latin America, Europe, France, little towns, Santander. We have all witnessed what has happened. The San Diego Museum of Art decided to grow from within. During my tenure, 14 years already, almost, in August, 14 years. That's a lot, guys. That's a lot. But we have been able to grow. Thank you, Mary, for saying 3,000 works of art. In reality, there are more than 20,000 works of art that we have added. Now, just adding MOPA, 11,000 overnight, right? That we didn't put there. That's not the story. The story is how people have gravitated towards the museum. My excitement is not about the numbers. It's about the quality of experience that we provoke in each one of our individuals, wherever the community they are, whatever language they talk. I don't care. We all talk the language of art. We all can be seduced, attracted, educated through wonderful manners like architecture. San Diego has changed a lot for me since I arrived. I'm just showcasing there one of the latest additions to a city that was not able or capable to do much because we were not LA, because we were not Chicago, because we were a Navy town, because what have you. That's what I heard when I arrived. I'm just quoting San Diegans. In reality, when I look at this small slide, I congratulate all of those that were daring enough to do additions, right? Go back to the Salk, please. And remember, we had the top of the top in 1963. Move on, we have now added other spaces. I didn't put the library here, which you all know. I mean, with the risk of leaving things out, I just want to mention that the time has arrived. The San Diego Museum of Art has gotten to a place where we need to serve better our communities. We are in that process, as you know. We selected Norman Foster after a thorough exercise. We started this conversation a long time ago, and there's committees from the board, from the staff, from volunteers that selected out of 61 firms of architecture, Norman Foster. So the future is yet to be described, and thank you for being there with us. The next talk you will see, I hope, what we will be doing together for the city, for the community, and to put art back at the center of this region. Thank you all for your patience. Thank you, Graciela, Deidre, and Dalia, for helping me with the PowerPoint. Thank you.